On this episode, I'm going to be talking about shame. Hi guys, and welcome to episode 21 of Your Progress is Our Passion. I hope you enjoyed my interview with Sarah Duff last week on episode 20, and we've got another great interview for you next week with episode 22 with Billy Hopkins, delving into mindset, particularly in the realms of relationships. But today I want to talk about part of relationship with yourself, and that is the idea of shame. Now, I understand this very much from a male point of view. So one thing I would love to hear from is from my female listeners. If you've ever experienced this from a female point of view, I'd love to hear your perspective on this. But in terms of a male point of view, the whole sort of tight-lippedness, that whole kind of keeping yourself to yourself and bottling things up is kind of written into the stereotypical aspects of our DNA. The whole idea that no man is an island, but pretty much we act like we are. We want to be closed off. We don't share our feelings. And when a man is going through difficulties, this becomes extra hard because a man will more readily, from my experience, feel shame and feel the kind of pressure of failure, or say like they're letting their family down, or they're failing at their job and they feel that they should be able to handle this. Then on top of that, they have this sort of double-layered shame where they feel bad about feeling bad. And because they don't open up to somebody, this only gets worse. And I know myself that I've been guilty of being in this situation. It's like you don't want to admit your failings because you're afraid of what other people will say to you. When really, more often than not, the other person's actually going to be there and going to be an arm of support, which is something that, and when you're in these difficult situations, you most critically need. Now, to go into an example from my own past, not in terms of a failing, but in terms of this whole sort of shame and closing myself off cycle, is when, for example, I'm feeling depressed and I feel bad, my initial reaction is to not feel sociable. I've got this whole thing where I don't think I'm a fun person to be around like that. I don't want to impose myself on other people, and sometimes I just don't have the energy. So what I do is then I will cancel plans that would cause me to have to go and be with someone. And at first, this feels like really nice. The first time, it's like, it feels like I'm able to breathe. I feel, because I get quite easily bogged down under the pressures of meeting other people's expectations. And for me, when I cancel a plan, I feel guilty, but then I also have this sort of sense of relief. I make peace with the guilt, and then I have this sense of ease where it's like, okay, I feel good for not having that responsibility on my shoulder anymore. And because that feels nice, I trick myself into thinking that cancelling plans is a good idea. And what this does is it then takes me on this cycle of shutting myself off, of kind of dealing with my own problems on my own. And the next thing you know, it's like, I'm cancelling, another commitment, and then I go more quiet and become more introverted, and I cancel another commitment, and then the next thing I'm cancelling my training. I'm not bothering going and doing that. And as this spirals down and down and down, I find myself then becoming completely closed off from the support that as I'm basically literally needing, in a sort of inverse to how much I'm offering it. So if you imagine like the graph is how much I need support versus how much I ask for support, the higher the need for support goes up, the lower the ask for support comes. And it is this kind of like shame spiral. I'm not sure if shame is actually the right word for it in this instance, but it's this kind of, I'm isolating myself. I'm essentially making myself isolated and creating a situation where I become more isolated. And what happens with this over time is my comfort zone for the things that I am capable of doing shrinks to match my new activities. So, when I'm in a great mood, when I've got momentum on my side, when I'm really going for it, my comfort zone's huge. Like, someone says to me, let's go and do this bloody Europe's toughest mudder thing. I know I keep coming back to that, and I'm like, yeah, cool. When I'm feeling good, I'm like, let's do that. Let's go to this party. Okay, yeah, cool, let's do that. Let's go to this New Year's Eve thing or whatever it may be. And I'm quite happy to go and do these things when my comfort zone's large, when momentum is on my side. But as I start feeling less inclined to do stuff, then these things start getting cancelled. Now, what happens is the comfort zone shrinks. The things I'm willing to do that were just outside my comfort zone before become too far outside of my comfort zone. So what I'm willing to do then shrinks. And then I have a day where my energy gets lower again. And then again, that shrinks. The things I am willing to do become less and less and less. And my comfort zone over time will shrink to the size of a pea. And then the only thing that's inside that comfort zone by that point is sitting on a couch with a blanket over me, maybe even feeling extra proactive, binge watching something. And that's no real existence, is it? So what can we do about this? Well, the first step for me now, and on December the 29th, December the 30th last year, like my last big episode, what happened with me there was I didn't feel up to see anyone, so I cancelled an appointment with one of my friends, and then the following day I went into work, tried to shake it all off, and then tried to train, and then I pulled my back out while I was training, and then I could basically cancel appointments for the rest of that day as well. And I had my wife's birthday the very next day, and I was all ready to. I really don't want to let her down more than anyone else, but I was ready to not go to that. It's her birthday party, a New Year's party, like 7 of my closest friends all going to be there, and I was in this position where I just didn't have the energy. I didn't have but what had happened is I'd shrunk down that comfort zone at a very rapid rate, might I add. On the 28th or so, I was absolutely fine. Over Christmas, I was absolutely fine. But within a very short space of time, because of my behaviour, cancelling the meeting with the friend, like cancelling the friend coming over, then not even speaking to people on the phone, my comfort zone shrunk very, very rapidly. And one of my friends, in fact, Dan Wheeler from a few episodes back, he would message me and he's like, "Do you want to talk?" And now my instinct in that exact moment was to say either no or just not even reply, or switch the phone off or push it away. Because once you start seeking isolation, you really start seeking isolation. It's not really a case of you're waiting for someone to rescue you by this point. And but I now that I've spent more time dealing with this particular situation with myself, recognise that is the time, going back to this graph from earlier, that is the time I need the help the most. When I am less inclined to ask for it, that is when I need it the most. So I took the lifeline there. I said yes. And I took that phone call, and that phone call started a chain reaction in the opposite direction. And he was like, he coached me very well. He's like, what would you be telling someone to do? I'm like, make the call to the friend. He's like, so what are you going to do? And I'm like, reluctantly, make the call to the friend. I'm still quite sulky at this point. And so I made the call, and I was like, to my friend James, I'm like, actually, can you come over? And he was like, yep, I'll be there in a minute. Came over, we chatted, and even like then, I wasn't better. It wasn't all fixed, but I was on the way. The momentum was going in the right direction. The comfort zone was beginning to expand again, and the idea of doing something else, doing something outside of that comfort zone, doing something that earlier that day I thought was impossible, became much more of a reality. And as a result, off the back of that, we ended up having an amazing party the next day. I had an amazing day the next day, really. I was able to give my wife the birthday that she deserves, and able to see in the new year in the right sort of manner, hang out with my friends, sort of be that kind of person that I love to be, that brings light to those around them, not drags people down. And yeah, hitting that spiral, reversing the direction of that momentum. One universal truth is that if we can start momentum in one direction, we can start it in another direction too. We just need the correct propulsion, the correct push, the correct instigator. And for me, that was breaking the cycle of what would happen in the downward. Right, what am I now less likely to do? Okay, let's do that. Even if speaking to someone on the phone or speaking to someone via text feels like the hardest thing to do, it's actually once you start, it's going to be a lot easier than suffering in silence, than suffering on your own, than being in isolation, than living with the shame. So what you need to do if you find yourself in that situation is do something that you would do if you were heading in the other direction. What is something you would do when you were feeling good? And rather than I'm doing that because I'm feeling good, it becomes I'm feeling good because I'm doing that. And you'll gradually, step by step, start coming out of this shame spiral, coming out of this isolation spiral, and start working back towards being open, being recognized, being connected to your friends, being happy, and being the happier person that you know that you're capable of being. So I'm going to leave it there. I hope that if any of you are in that dark place, you will reach out to someone. And again, I would really love, because I've not experienced this all that much with females. I've experienced the comfort zone shrinking thing, but the idea of bottling it up, keeping yourself to yourself and isolating yourself, I've not experienced that with too many females. So I would love to hear a female perspective on this. Dave@cofitpt.com if you want to email me. Your progress is my passion as always. I love you all, and I will catch you next week. Bye.